So Blake, you were on the Costa Concordia, the big boat that went kaput. What happened that day? What was your experience?
Well, it was actually very terrifying, as you would expect. It was, if you imagine we're in a convention hall, it was probably maybe a fourth of this size, and the ship held 4,000 people. So when we were actually having drinks, we were only 3 hours into the cruise, had dinner, had some drinks, and we felt a big thud. And I immediately looked at my partner and said, "Oh my God, did you hear that?" And he always makes fun of me because I hear everything. And he said, "No, I didn't hear that. What did you hear?" And then the whole ship just started shaking like an earthquake. And when you're in something that's in a vessel that large, like again, if you imagine yourself being in this exhibit hall right now and it starts tilting like this, then it is terrifying. We heard some dishes breaking, and I looked around and I saw everything flying off the tables around us. People started screaming. There wasn't a lot of panic right away, even though it sounds like there was. The panic didn't set in until a little bit later, but I looked up at the bar, and it was a round bar, and all the bottles just flew off the bar because at this point we're pretty significantly listing to the one side. And it was absolutely terrifying. I mean, you just have no control whatsoever, and not knowing what's going on, we really had no idea. Even if you think you're sinking or not, clearly there's a big problem.
So what do? You crawl out of there? Did you find a window?
Well, that's a good question. The first thing I said to my partner, I looked at him and I said, "Well, let's just get back to our cabin," because we were on the back of the ship and we had a balcony. And my first instinct actually was, let's get somewhere in case we need to jump off the ship, that we can actually jump off the ship and not be stuck in a cabin or in a restaurant or in a bar. So that was the first instinct, was actually get somewhere in case we had to jump.
And is that what happened? Is that the result? You end up jumping off the back of the ship?
Luckily, we did not jump. I think about half the people that perished that night were people that jumped in. They died from hypothermia because it was January and the water was very cold. We actually did not follow protocol. We did go back to our cabin like they asked us to. They just kept basically lying to us, saying it was a generator problem over and over and over, and just stay calm and stay in your room. And we decided just to go to our room. We got our life vests on. We went out and kind of used the balcony as a barometer of how much further were we going, or were we straightening up, or what was happening. And the ship ended up, I'm not sure how many people have seen the clips, or the Discovery did a great show on it, but the wind actually caught the ship. All the balconies on the one side, we were being pushed out into the ocean by the wind, and the wind flipped just like that at the exact right time and pushed us up and over. We didn't know what was going on again, but when we violently shifted the other way, I looked at Steve and I said, "What are we going to do?" And he said, "Well, while you were unpacking, I read the emergency information, and the lifeboats are on the fourth deck." And I said, "Well, then that's where we're going." And we just made a run for it. And they were still at this point telling people to stay in their cabins. So there was really no call to action right away. And it was really terrifying because of that, because we knew something was really wrong. And I started feeling uneasy about them. I didn't know they were lying at that point, but I started feeling uneasy pretty quickly. So when we got to the grand staircase, that was probably the most chaotic scene. People going up, people coming down, children crying, people not knowing what's going on, people coming out of their cabins to the grand staircase half dressed. It's 10 o'clock at night at this point, and they were telling us to go to the top, to go all the way up. Now those are the people that ended up having to rappel down the side of the ship 12 hours later because the lifeboats were disabled on the opposite side of the ship. And we just instinctually went ahead and went down and went to the fourth deck, and we stood there and just waited. It was about an hour and 15 minutes before they finally called abandon ship.
So you get on the lifeboat, get to shore. I mean, a hotel. What was there? Were they did they have any kind of risk plan in place for you guys?
No, they did not, and I'm only smiling at the thought of how absurd it is, not because it's funny at all. It was so horrifying. I actually went up, I saw a gentleman in epaulets and a cap, and I thought, okay, he's an officer. And when I walked up, he was the director of hospitality, which is basically the general manager of of that portion of the ship. And I thought, oh good, my people, my hotel people, this is going to be great. And I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, so what do we do now?" And he said, "What do you mean, what do we do now?" And I said, "Well, we've got injured people and sick people and children and women that are pregnant." I said, "We kind of need to get people in certain areas. Do you need help with that?" And he said, "No." He said, "We got you off. What else do you want?" And I said, "Well, seriously though," I said, "when help comes, we need to know who needs the most care, or who needs the most critical care, and quickly, to have them ready for when people come." And he said, "Well, like you say in America, shit happens."
Unbelievable.
And I looked at him and I just could not believe. That's when I knew that we were just on our own, And as a matter of fact, the kitchen crew, when they got off, they formed a big circle, and we didn't know what was going on. And then it turns out they had a box of food that they brought out. They were just biscuits, and they all started eating them inside their circle. And they've got 4,000 passengers, some of them that needed critical care, and they're sitting there eating biscuits while we're all on the outside not knowing what the heck is going on.
Did they ever come back to you, or I mean, essentially, you get back home and no compensation, or how's this turning out?
No, the compensation. Well, there's lawsuits, there's individual lawsuits, there's class action suits. We actually decided not to sue. We weren't physically injured. We didn't seem to be emotionally injured at the time. We weren't having nightmares. So we had pretty quickly decided not to sue. The more I thought about it from a hospitality perspective, I ended up wanting to sue them just because the lack of duty of care to their customers, no real plan. And once we got the terms of carriage, which they had quickly taken off their website, it took about a month to get those, and I just saw all the legal terms, the things that we all sign and don't really think about. And, we had to file a lawsuit in Genoa, Italy. Between that plus the depositions, the translations, it was about $10,000 just to launch a lawsuit. And that's when I thought, I don't have $10,000, I can't really do this, and so they did eventually offer a settlement. It was about just shy of $15,000 per passenger, and that was to release them of any liability of future emotional issues or anything that you might have.
And the most important thing is you guys are okay and no injuries, so that's fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Blake. Thank you
My
very much.
pleasure.
I'm so glad you are okay.
Always happy to talk to you about
All
it.
right,
Thanks,
thank you.
Glenn.
Bye.